Intra. Welcome to a chilling tale from r/Nosleep. Prepare yourself for a disturbing night that defies the quiet of an apartment building. Narrative. I don't usually work on Sundays, but I needed some extra cash, so I took an early shift. I came home at around 2 p.m., dragging my feet after a long day, my mind already drifting to the comfort of my apartment. I live in this modest building where my place sits on the first floor, alongside another unit belonging to a guy who's rarely home. Downstairs is Mrs. Rogue's place, and the second floor houses two other flats, one occupied by an elderly couple and the other by a family I've never really seen. I've pieced together their existence from the sounds that filter through the walls. The kids moaning about school in the mornings, the stomp of little feet down the stairs, the occasional hushed voices or clatter of dishes. After 10 p.m., though everything usually goes quiet, a routine I've come to rely on. But today was different. As I rummaged through my bag for my keys, a faint murmur reached me from upstairs. The voices were hushed, tense, the words jumbled together as if discussing something critical. I'd never laid eyes on these neighbors, just assumed they were a family based on the domestic noises I'd heard over time. It's not like I've personally met them or exchanged more than a nod in passing. I just assumed. Anyway, as I said, I finally got a hold of my keys and unlocked the door. Yet I didn't immediately step inside. For some reason, I let the door swing open and lingered there, listening for 2 more seconds. I'm somewhat glad I did. The moment the door creaked, the voices upstairs stopped completely, as if they were now listening to me. I remained still, the silence stretching thin between us. We all seemed to study it for a while. Then, a singular step echoed on the stairs above, a sound that sent a cold shiver down my back and tensed every muscle in my body. I couldn't explain why, but a sudden, primal urge to get inside and shut the door took over, which I did, locking it behind me with a shaky hand. Afterwards, I started putting some groceries in the fridge and doing some errands around the house, nothing out of the ordinary. Faintly at first, then growing stronger, I began to hear this birthday song upstairs. I smiled and sighed to myself. They were planning a birthday, man. That's why they were so cautious, so nervous. It sounded like there were around 5 or 6 people singing, their voices blending in a slightly off-key harmony. "Happy birthday, dear Jonah," they crooned. That was cute, I thought, picturing a kid with a cake and candles. When they finished, they started again. I found it a bit odd, but I figured the kid had asked for an encore. Kids love blowing out candles, right? It was an awfully long song, though, with unnecessary runs and filler lyrics stretching it out. When they concluded, a little pause followed, and then they began once more in the exact same way. Fucking weird family, I thought, and by that time I'd grown annoyed. So I just put on my headphones, cranked up some music, and laid down on the couch. I fell asleep around 4 or 5 p.m., the exhaustion from the shift pulling me under. I woke from the nap disoriented, the kind of groggy haze that only an after-work nap can deliver. I'd slept until around 8 p.m., and the sun was peeking at me from behind some buildings, casting a sunset that was more blue than red, a melancholy hue that stirred a strange, liminal feeling. It reminded me of waking up after school naps with a sore throat and a pillow mark on my face, my mood ruined, my mother calling me to dinner. I swallowed, staring blankly at the window highlighted in gold and rum, rubbed my eyes, then massaged my face to shake off the daze. I stood up to get a glass of water, walking barefoot to the kitchen, which was now sunken in that specific 8 p.m. darkness, a quiet, almost eerie stillness. I stood there for a moment, silent, not knowing what I wanted from my life. Then I finally registered one important detail. The folks upstairs were still singing *happy birthday. I listened for a while, unsure of what my reaction should be. I wondered if they had some recording playing on a loop, but that wasn't really the case, as each version sounded different from the previous. They really were weird, or maybe their kid was just eccentric. Maybe they were practicing for some performance. I started thinking, as I said, I hadn't personally met these people before, so I had no idea what they did. Maybe they were musicians or actors. I reasoned, trying to justify the oddity. I put my headphones back on and went on trying to make some sort of dinner, even though I wasn't really hungry and my throat still hurt from the dry air. I ate, watched a show to distract myself, then took a shower. Their singing had started to piss me off. It was now approaching 10 p.m., and I felt the growing need to go upstairs and tell them to quit it. I'm not confrontational by nature. I really don't like telling people they upset me, and most don't have an appropriate reaction at all. I didn't want to talk to them, so I called my mom instead. I started telling her about my day, the shift, the groceries, but she interrupted me, asking about the people upstairs. Yeah, they've been doing it for hours. I don't know, it's starting to really get on my nerves, I admitted. Well, go up to them and knock. Aren't the other residents annoyed? The old people upstairs. I'm sure they wanted to sleep by now, she suggested. Maybe I could just put on some, I began, but the idea of confrontation loomed large. I hung up, the singing drilling into my skull. Midnight approached, and the song grew louder, more insistent, like a taunt that wouldn't let go. I crept to my door, pressing my ear against it, the wood cool against my skin. The voices weren't just singing anymore. They were laughing, a low, hollow chuckle weaving beneath the tune, sending a shiver up my spine. Heart pounding, I peeked through the peephole. Shadows moved upstairs, too many for a typical family, silhouettes shifting in unnatural ways. A figure paused at the stairwell, its outline wrong, too tall, too thin like a stretched reflection. The singing stopped, replaced by a single, drawn-out note that vibrated through the walls, rattling my nerves. I stumbled back, locking the door with trembling hands, as slow, deliberate footsteps began to descend. I didn't sleep that night, sitting with a kitchen knife, the sound fading only as dawn broke. When I finally ventured out, the building was eerily quiet. I knocked on the elderly couple's door. They were confused, saying they heard nothing. The family's apartment was empty, listed as vacant for months according to the landlord. No Jonah, no party, just an unsettling void. Yet that night lingers in my mind, and I swear I hear a faint, happy birthday when the lights dim, a whisper that refuses to leave. Intro. Story by EmmaWatsonButDumber. Link in description. Subscribe for more creepy stories.